Welcome. My name is Dulguun Batbold, and I'm a senior economist at Visa's Business and Economic Insights team. I'm here to share with you a use case we developed for our Spending Momentum Index, which I think can be quite helpful in navigating uncertain economic times ahead. Please note that this presentation is covered by our standard disclaimers. In particular, the views you hear today are of the Business and Economic Insights team and do not necessarily reflect those of Visa's executive management and affiliates. So let's start with recall what the Spending Momentum Index, or SMI, is, and more importantly, what information it can offer beyond other measures of consumer spending you may be more familiar with. SMI is our big data-driven indicator that fully leverages the breadth and depth of Visa net data to offer a measure of how broad-based recoveries and downturns are in the consumer economy. So instead of asking by how much consumers are increasing spending, SMI provides an answer to how many of them are growing their spending. Conceptually, the index methodology is quite simple. For each anonymized credential we see in our network, we ask, did the consumer holding that credential increase spending this month relative to the same month a year earlier? If yes, we assign a score of 200. If spending remained stable on the card, we assign a score of 100. And if spending declined relative to prior year, we assign a score of 0. When these scores are averaged across hundreds of millions of credentials in our network, we get an index that's centered around 100, with the index values above 100, indicating that on a net basis, more consumers are increasing spending relative to last year, and vice versa. What we find is that measured this way, SMI provides a more accurate and granular signal of consumer confidence in their own financial situation and their ability to sustain spending growth going forward. What's more, SMI is available in over 80 markets around the world, which collectively account for 3/4 of the global consumer economy. While SMI is strongly correlated with traditional measures of consumer spend, such as retail sales, during volatile economic times, SMI can diverge from these aggregate indicators. Deviations like this usually carry an important and valuable signal about the underlying resiliency of the consumer economy. Consider first the fact that when they happen, recessions in the United States will not have an even impact on local and regional economies where your businesses operate. Case in point, during both the Great Recession and recent COVID recession, there were states that were able to buck the national trends and preserve positive economic growth. In fact, consumer spending growth in the best performing state was 7.5 percentage points higher than in the worst performing state at the depth of these recessions in 2009 and 2020. Such variation underscores the need to have a business strategy that is tailored to local economic conditions. What the chart on the left shows also is that such regional disparities are not anomalies, representing rather a common pattern observed across all 6 most recent U.S. recessions. We developed our SMI precisely to provide a more timely measure of consumer spending, not just nationally, but also locally, to better understand economic conditions driving our clients' business, so that they can better react to the changing environment. What is more, it is no accident that we included the word momentum in the name of our index. Areas where SMI trends indicate stronger than average spending momentum tend to maintain that edge months into the future. Had our clients had access to our SMI at the beginning of the 2008 recession, they would have already seen emerging weakness in states like Florida and California, which resulted in a much weaker than average consumption growth in those states during the year, while also anticipating the relative resilience of local economies in states like Texas. Having access to SMI then could have provided an advance warning to businesses, helping them plan ahead, adjust acquisition plans, reallocate marketing budgets, and refocus areas for risk monitoring. As we look ahead, a common question we get from our clients is, can we provide an advanced signal of which regions are about to enter a recession? In other words, where can we expect an economic downturn that is more than just a temporary weak patch, but rather a pronounced slump in activity spanning multiple industries and indicators. At a national level, identifying recessions is conceptually easier, but much less straightforward at a state and local level, where there's often simply no comparable data to make such a determination. One very useful indicator developed by an economist, Claudia Sam, is the change in the unemployment rate relative to the low of the preceding 12 months. What she observed was that in all 11 US recessions since World War II, shown as shaded areas on the left-hand side chart here, this indicator rose more than half a percentage point at the start of each recession, providing a very useful marker of the beginning of a recession, which we can extend to identify recessions at the state and even local levels. Defined this way, historical data shows two very useful insights about the relationship between national and regional recessions. First, regional recessions are much more common and always precede nationwide recessions, helping provide useful advance warning to regional and local issuers, well beyond initially impacted areas. Second, even if business in your region may not be showing signs of a possible recession ahead, please note that economic downturns elsewhere in the country typically spread nationwide if regional recessions start impacting 10 or more states, or more than 1 in 5 cities. So early signs of an economic slump are more likely to emerge in your neighboring towns and states before showing up in your own backyard. Another question that we often receive from our clients is at what point any weakness they observe in their local SMI starts signaling elevated risks of a recession. We're pleased to introduce a use case leveraging the power and geographical granularity of our spending momentum indices to gauge recession probabilities at state and local levels. These probabilities leverage the totality of information available at such a granular level and summarize in an easy-to-understand and simple metric the likelihood of a local recession within the next 6 months, implied by the SMI and our best AI models. Consider, for instance, what the model would have predicted as high and low recession risk cities in January of 2008. Our SMI-based measure would have helped provide businesses with an early warning of economic weakness observed across cities in states such as California, Nevada, Arizona, or Florida. But equally important, help identify pockets of resiliency around states like Texas, Utah, and Colorado. The chart on the right shows how employment growth trended through the rest of the year, showing clearly how jobs growth turned negative twice within the first 6 months among high-risk cities, while low-risk cities maintained positive employment growth well through the end of the year, and turned negative only when the collapse of Lehman Brothers precipitated a global financial crisis that plunged the US into its deepest downturn since the Depression era. Just as importantly as managing economic cycles on the way down, our recession probability measure can also help businesses catch the recovery as it happens, rather than reacting after the fact. Keep in mind that US recessions typically end within a year, and businesses earlier to restart marketing and acquisition campaigns can gain a strategic first-mover advantage. Roll forward time to June 2009, for instance, when the US economy reached its lowest point of the recession. SMI implied probabilities then would have already identified early green shoots emerging in cities across the plain states such as Iowa, Nebraska, and the Dakotas. Issuers who have expanded their presence in these states and cities then could have enjoyed a much faster spending and revenue growth through the middle of 2010 relative to the competition. Now, you may be wondering what our latest SMI data says about the strength of the consumer economy in your area. Overall, first quarter SMI readings signal relatively low risk of a recession in the US, indicating about a 30% chance of a national downturn in the second half of 2025. but there are significant differences across regions. Let's start with the chart on the left, which shows spending momentum across the United States by industry concentration of local employment. The picture that emerges is that of a consumer that is perhaps starting to feel the impact of recent volatility related to the new US trade policy. In particular, consumers in areas where local industries are more exposed to trade uncertainty were showing greater caution in their spending earlier this year, particularly in local areas with a high concentration of manufacturing and farming jobs. Another way to see this is the US map on the right, where our AI-driven model, for example, indicates elevated risks of local downturns across cities in New England and Michigan, based on the behavior of millions of consumers who reside in these areas, as captured in our Spending Momentum Index. Our valued clients and partners can access regular updates to SMI, as well as our recession probability indicators on the Visa Analytics platform. I encourage you to subscribe to our interactive Tableau dashboards that feature monthly SMI readings both at the national as well as state and local levels, which can help you stay on top of consumer spending trends impacting your area of operation and offer real-time intelligence to help navigate your business through uncertain times ahead. That concludes the presentation. I hope you found the information useful, and I would like to thank you deeply for your time.